Well,
Hello and welcome to
A Couple Codes.
My name is Cody.
And my name is Emily.
And we've been coding with the Odin project for 29 weeks now. Today we're going to give you an update on what we did this week. So what you been up to?
Well, I'm currently 79% of the way through the JavaScript course. This week I started and completed my memory card project, and I also put together a personal portfolio website to keep track of all of my projects. Yeah.
Have you had any big challenges this week?
My biggest challenge was when I was building my memory card project, I made things too complicated, which again is the pattern that I'm seeing with pretty much every project that I'm doing. And basically the project is a web page that contains card images, and the user will click each card and they get a point for every card they click, but if they click the same card twice, then the game starts over. So I had multiple levels of components all the way down to every single card was a component when it really didn't need to be. So once I realized that things were a little too complicated, I cut back on the number of components I was using, and everything ran a lot more smoothly. My code was a lot easier to read and was a lot easier to adjust.
What specifically made you realize that it was too complicated?
Well, I asked you a question and showed you my code, and you were like, that's way too complicated. I mean, I knew it was, but it was helpful for you to just be point blank. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could trim down some of these areas.
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Oh, you didn't know that? I thought you were fishing for it.
No.
Yeah, no, it was when you said that I took a look at everything and realized that I had a lot of unnecessary components and hooks.
What was the thing that you asked me about?
I don't even remember. It had to do with updating the state of a parent component. I was passing the function for setting state to the child component, and then within the child component was trying to update parent state. There was some kind of disconnect happening.
I think I recommended using a callback.
Yeah, you callback.
But the thing was that you didn't necessarily need to throw it down there into the component card. You could have just had the image have an on-click event or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it was something.
Essentially, I had a component for every single card image, but the component wasn't doing anything. I was passing state from the parent and then using that as props, but there wasn't really a reason to, because it was returning a very short snippet of code. So I just instead created the image card directly within that parent component, and it made things a lot simpler.
I think the way that I handle or have started to handle making new components is I'll make like one big thing, a component that is going to have a lot of stuff going on with it.
Okay.
And then once I realize there's a lot to handle, then I'll make it into like a component so then it's more readable. So I'll have like a lot of, at the very end where the return statement is, there'll be like a bunch of JSX with maybe a couple things of logic. And then I'll realize, oh man, I could potentially, since I have logic, I'm reusing some of the same JSX within those things. So then I can maybe create a component for that. You could also just set a variable above that, which I recently started doing, was setting a JSX variable because I didn't realize that was a thing. I think I might have seen it from you.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, so I started doing that a little bit too. If it wasn't necessarily something that would be a component that would be used somewhere else, I would just want it to not necessarily have to read for logic, so then I'd have just a simple variable.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to read, like if you have conditional logic, and I think the way that I was using it was for my CV app. I had an edit mode and a publish mode, and so I wanted to return similar elements but different element types, if that makes sense. And so I just created a variable for each of those snippets of JSX, and then in my return statement it's super easy to read, where it's like if you're in edit mode, return this group and not. But yeah, I took kind of an opposite approach when I started with my memory card project with making components. I just got excited because I could see that, oh, okay, these image cards are going to be repeated, so I should use a component for that, and then I should have a component for their container, and then a component for their header. So I started with the structure of the components first, which I think you can definitely have a place for that.
Yeah.
But in my case, it might have helped to start actually writing code first, and then made more components as I needed them.
So was there anything significant that you learned?
Yeah, I learned about the array method find index, which either I don't remember it or I haven't seen it yet, but it's a method that returns the index of the first element of an array that satisfies a callback function that you pass into the method. And it's amazing because in my project I use find index a lot, but I just write my own helper function function for it. But now that I know that there's actually just a method I can use, then that'll be super helpful. And I used it in my memory card project. But where are you in the curriculum?
I'm still working on the final JavaScript project, and I'm also completing my data structure and algorithm strategy.
Okay. Any big challenges this week?
In regards to the project and the Odin project curriculum, no. The data structures and algorithms, I'm getting to a point where I need to stop reading and start doing something. So I'm going to move on to the next phase where I'm actually doing leak code problems and getting into some sort of routine, exercising with that, because the data structures and algorithms was pretty much all reading up until this point. To get understanding of Python syntax, an understanding of data structures and algorithms from more of a theoretical perspective, and then this period that I'm transitioning from is getting an understanding of patterns that are common to these leak code problems. So things like using two pointers, fast and slow pointer, stuff like that, which will be helpful to just have an idea that those things exist now that I'm going into actually practicing problems. So yeah, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm going to try to get into some routine. I may steal back a little bit more time to do Odin project stuff, since this is something I keep doing over and over and keep practicing.
What did you work on for your JavaScript project?
This week I created 2 delete buttons for my view lexicon table. So a button to delete attribute and a button to delete reference.
Okay. Is there anything significant that you've learned this week?
No.
Well, that's all that we have time for today. If you enjoy these updates, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to follow along on our web dev journey. Were you done answering your question? Was that your final answer?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
That's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I didn't learn much this week. It was just keeping building, and then making the decision to move on to data structure stuff. So, too much. Thanks for tuning into
A Couple Codes.